Welcome everybody to Amazing People, Episode 8, the first episode of 2019. I'm here today with the amazing Hunter Kemper. He is a 4-time U.S. Olympian. He was a triathlete. He competed in the Olympics in 2000, 2004, 2008, and 2012. He's probably friends with Michael Phelps.
I do. I know Michael Phelps.
Okay.
We're not great friends, but we're friends, yes.
Great. He's a 7-time U.S. elite national champion. From 2005 to 2006, he was the #1 triathlete in the world, and the list goes on and on. So today we're going to be talking about his life, his love for athletics, his experiences in the Olympics, and whatever else may come up.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
It's good to be here.
Thank you so much. So how'd you first get started in the sport of triathlon?
It's a great question. You know, I grew up here in Orlando, Florida, Longwood, Altamont Springs area.
Which is where we are now.
Yes, where we currently are. And I went to Sable Point Elementary, Rock Lake Middle School, and played all sports. Did soccer, tennis, baseball, basketball, swimming was a sport I started on early on in my life at 6 years old. And through some swimming friends of mine, they got me introduced to the sport of triathlon. They asked me to come out to a triathlon in Claremont, Florida, which is just a little bit northwest of here.
Okay.
And I decided to do my very first race. It was a 100-yard swim. It was a 5K bike ride or a 3-mile bike ride.
Yeah.
And it was a half-mile run. And it took me 17 minutes to do. I was 10 years old, and I won first place. There was only 3 of us in the age division, so I was the best of 3. We were all on the podium.
Well,
so
it starts with small numbers.
It does.
Everything starts small. Yeah.
It does. So it was a fun time for me, and I realized as I got older that I was moving down the basketball bench, was moving down the order in baseball. Didn't have the emotions and the temperament for tennis, and just fell in love with the sport of triathlon as it grew, as I kept on winning races.
Mm-hmm. Well, triathlon for me personally, that's not the sport that I would do. It's so endurance based, and I wouldn't have the discipline for that. I need a game or something fun involved in it.
And I think most kids probably do, right? Most young athletes probably prefer that, right? I was in the minority, hence the 3 kids, you know, in my age group, that was it.
Right.
You know, this is back in 1986, you know, which dates me a little bit. But I then went on to the national championships. It was over at Busch Gardens in Tampa, right here, 2 hours away. It was my second race.
Yeah.
And it was the same distance. It was a 100-yard swim in a pool, and the wave machine was not going on, but it was right there in Busch Gardens. We biked around the animals in the morning, and then we finished with a half-mile run, and I won that. I was a national champion, thought it was the greatest thing, and I beat 9 other kids, so I was the best of 9. Yeah, so I was getting better, right? Yeah, improving. And so I just kept on winning national titles. I fell in love with the sport, traveled around the country, was kind of doing it as a club sport. Had a little group here in Orlando, Florida, kids that we would do triathlons together, and just fell in love with it. Just loved the idea of running long distances, swimming, which I was already naturally good at, and riding my bike around the cul-de-sac in the neighborhood. So.
How do you get from 1986, loving it, placing first of 3 or 9 or whatever, local people, to years later being an Olympian, which is a games that I believe is thousands of years old?
It's exactly right, yeah. I mean, the modern Olympics was back in, in Greece, right? Just over 100 years ago. And so, I mean, for me, it starts with a dream. It starts with a passion, right? I mean, what is all of our passions? And I think that passion kind of got lit, that flame got lit early on in my career, in my life. By winning one race, by starting small, by winning the national championships, by doing it again, by seeing your name in the paper, by seeing my name in Sports Illustrated, faces in the crowd. You know, those kind of things I think fuels a kid in that desire to want to be really good at something. And then I saw professional triathletes in the country. I would read Triathlon magazine, I would get the magazines. I would see other athletes, men and women, making a living doing the sport. And so that's what I fell in love with. I'm a teenager. I'm 13, 14 years old. I'm doing triathlons around the state of Florida, traveling around the whole state of Florida, racing against adults or age groupers that are 30, amateurs that are 30 years old, 35, 40-year-old men that are beating me, but I'm getting close. I'm getting better. And I think early on that desire to want to be really good at something fueled me, and my passion to want to be great. And it was an Olympic sport, so that wasn't like where it all began. And for me, it was just becoming a professional triathlete. That's what I wanted to do. That was my ultimate goal, was to making a living doing the sport.
When you were at whatever age, how did you decide between how to balance academics, college, life path versus, I'm sure, the very rigorous training that you had to do?
Yeah, it's a good question. I agree. I think boys, I think girls, I mean, you grow up with the dream of wanting to be either really good in school, right, with your studies, maybe good in instruments, or good in sports. And mine was sports. I knew that's where my passion lied. I knew I had a real good talent in endurance sports. I knew I was good at that. And I think when you combine talent with hard work and dedication, that's when you get the Roger Federers in tennis. That's when you get the Michael Phelps in swimming, the Katie Ledeckis in swimming, the Michaela Schifrons in skiing, right? You get these amazing athletes who do amazing things when you combine that quality of wanting to work extremely hard, harder than anyone else, and have the talent that they were God-given with, born with, to be that good. So for me, they didn't do triathlon in college, right? So when I was at Lake Brantley High School here in Orlando, Florida, I'm looking at schools, and I come home and I get the mail. My dad's got the mail and he's waiting for me. He's got a big smile on his face. He's like, "Oh, you got some mail." And I'm like, "Oh, really? What's the deal with my dad?" And a big smirk. So I come to get it, and Wake Forest University sent me the women's media guide for track and field. They thought Hunter Kemper was a female athlete, which is a very humbling experience for a young boy, right?
Was it the name? Or
it was.
it?
I guess it was the slow times. We know that. My running times weren't very good.
Okay.
And it was apparently Hunter with the slow times. They thought they got themselves a hold of a pretty good girl, not a great, not an average guy. So I had a call. They're like, he hands me the phone. It's like, you should make a phone call. Call the men's track program and let them know. So I called them and said, "Listen, I'm not a girl. I'm a guy. I mean, apparently my times don't dignify the fact that I can run that fast. But can I get a scholarship at your university?" And they're like, "No, you can't do that." "Can I walk on at your university?" "Yes, you can." And so for me, Wake Forest was a perfect fit. It's in North Carolina, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, about an hour north of Charlotte. And it was the best running school. And for me, we don't do triathlon in college. It's not a university sport. It's a club level sport, right? So you can either swim in school in Division I athletics, you can run cross country and track in Division I athletics, but you can't do triathlon. So I had to choose either swimming or running. I was burnt out of swimming, didn't want to do that. And I chose running because it was my weakness of my three disciplines, of the swim, bike, and run. Of those three disciplines, running was my weakness. So I actually went to college with the idea in mind that I would work on my weakness, turn it into a strength, so that when I got out of college, I'd be a professional triathlete in a better position to kind of enter the pro ranks. That was my whole desire, to get better in my running.
Is that a little bit of a late blooming? Like, do triathletes normally know, like at age 17, 18, when you're about to go to college, you were not even of sort of university level at that point, right?
Right.
Are normal triathletes normally better off at that point, and then you bloom later?
I think I am a late bloomer. I think I definitely would say that, especially with my running career. I mean, all throughout my running, I got better and better each year. And by the time I was a senior in college in 1998, I was all conference in the 10,000 meters. So I walked on, and if in football you earn those scholarships, they give you those because there's 80 some to give out. And track and field and cross country, they don't give out those scholarships. But if they did, I would have earned myself into one. And I was definitely a late bloomer when I was as a runner. And as a triathlete, not so much. I think triathlon is, the maturity age of a triathlete is probably early to, mid 30s. I mean, it's late. It's not your gymnasts in the teens, right? I mean, it's definitely later on. And while I was in school, when I was actually going to Wake Forest, between my freshman and sophomore year, they announced that triathlon was going to be in the Olympic Games. So again,
it started to fall in place.
It started to fall in place.
Outside of you.
Right. So you basically asked, how did the whole Olympic idea kind of set in? I always wanted to be an Olympian, didn't know how I was going to get there, knew it wasn't going to be through triathlon, and I thought my Olympic dream had kind of fizzled out, right? Had been,
Why?
Just because I didn't think they hadn't announced triathlon in the Olympic Games yet. This is before college, right?
Okay.
I'm in high school.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm just going to be a professional triathlete. That's what I want to be, right? But when they announced that triathlon was going to be in the Olympic Games, that Olympic desire and that passion of mine back when I was a little kid wearing that Going for Gold hat on became a big, strong desire of mine, and said, this is in 1995, five years before the 2000 Games in Sydney, Australia. And I fell in love with the idea of being on the very first U.S. Olympic triathlon team in 2000. I would graduate in 1998. I would have 2 years to kind of go through all the qualification procedures, go through all the necessary steps, the Olympic trials, in order to make the Olympic team. And only 3 men and 3 women make a triathlon Olympic Games for the U.S.
So you were one of 3.
You
started as the first of 3.
I started the first of 3.
When you were younger.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, okay. All right, so your Olympic days are behind you at this point. Okay. What advice would you have for aspiring athletes? People who are younger than you and me, people who have a dream, they don't know if they can make it work. You've been in those shoes.
Yeah.
And you turned out to be where someone will want to get to.
Yeah, first I would say, do all sports for kids, for aspiring athletes. Like, try everything, right? Try to find what you naturally are good at. And I think don't force something. And if a kid doesn't want to do it, right? If kids don't naturally want to go and play, if basketball is their sport, but you're telling them, hey, let's go to the courts, let's go to the gym, let's go to the YMCA and practice, and you're forcing them to do it, that's not a good thing, right? The kid has to lead. The child has to lead. The young adult, the adolescent has to lead the parent, right? Especially in a sport like mine. I mean, you talked about how your passion was more, in tennis and other things, sports and those team sports, right? Fun things, games, competition, games.
Yeah.
That's most people. Right. But for me, it's in that endurance. If my parents were always the one leading me and saying, okay, you got to go ride your bike, you got to go run, like we got to go to swim practice, and I was always like, oh, I don't want to go, that wouldn't be very successful on my part, right? Because I would always be high level of burnout. I wouldn't make it. So the adolescent, the kid, the youth has to be the one leading and driving it.
Okay.
And I would definitely say that for me, I wouldn't specialize until later on. I mean, I would say like 14, 15, 16 years old, do you really need to get specific and specialty in your sport? I would say. Because as you're learning different sports, as you're growing in different sports. With my own kids, right? I have 5 kids now, and my oldest is 11, and I want him to play basketball. His sport's not triathlon. That's not what his gifts are. You can just tell the way he runs. I mean, he's a good runner, he's a good athlete, but he's more competition, games. He's more of that. So basketball, baseball, he'd love to play football, volleyball, all these sports. Let him do it all. Let him try it all, and then as he gets older, realize, what am I really good at? What do I love, ultimately? And have that passion carry you on. Because ultimately, not everyone's going to be a professional athlete. I mean, what are the statistics? I mean, all the parents now put their kids and put so much money into club sports and into funding this. But yet the success rate of them getting a scholarship, one, is really low to any kind of Division I athletics. So all the money they're putting in and funding in order to get that, they could lose out and put that towards academics, leadership scholarships, those kind of things in school, where there's much more of. And even if you do go to Division I sports, right, the chance of you actually being a professional at that sport is extremely rare. So it's difficult. I don't think you go there with the idea of wanting to be a professional athlete. You just go there with the idea that I want to be good. I want to be really, really great at what I'm trying to do. And for me, it was triathlon. So I would say the best thing a parent can do, a kid can do, is find what they love to do early on and gradually learn to develop that and cultivate that.
To your point about doing everything and then specializing, one success story of that is Roger Federer, who you mentioned.
Yes.
He was playing soccer and tennis until he was about 12. And he knew he wanted to be a pro athlete, and at that point he had to choose. And at that point he dropped soccer. He kept playing tennis, and his footwork is really good.
Really good. That's right, because of soccer. That's one thing that you get from soccer tremendously is great footwork. Exactly right. Just like with my son, right, in basketball, great footwork, learning that. How is that going to help him on the baseball diamond? It's going to help him tremendously in the outfield, right, with the footwork and those kind of things. So absolutely, sports compound on one another and help each other out. And so for him, he wouldn't be the tennis player probably he is today and has been throughout his entire career if he didn't have that early soccer background. And so I think it's important that kids try all things, because if you don't know what's out there, if I never was in swimming, I wouldn't have those swimming friends come to me and actually pursue triathlon, and just exposing your kids to all different kinds of sports. But make sure they love what they're doing. They have a passion for it. They're the ones driving the train. They're the ones saying, hey, mom and dad, can we go to the outside and play and shoot hoops? Can we go to the tennis court? Can we be the ones doing it? Because sports are supposed to be fun, right? It's a kid's game. Mm-hmm. Naturally, it's a kid's game. Football, all of it.
When there's a real young spirit in it, that's when it's alive and fresh.
It is. But what takes that out of it sometimes is that corporate kind of like that commerce, that business side to it sometimes when you're dragging your kid around can take that out of it. But if the kid's always keeping that spirit alive to whereas, I want to do this, I look forward to it. I look forward to getting better, to mastering the art of being better. It's that process that you go through. So for me in my triathlon career, I always felt like I was seeking improvement. The process of wanting to be better each day and learning the skills to get better. I always felt like I was learning. All the way up into my late 30s, early 40s, I felt like I was learning in the sport of triathlon, which was huge for me. If that flame had gone out, the process of wanting to give every day and learning to try to be better in each discipline, and what I can do with my nutrition, what can I do with my actual endurance training, with my strength training as I'm getting older to prevent injury, what can I do with my technology, with the bikes and the running shoes and these different things? What can I do in order to improve my transitions? All these things. If I wasn't constantly thinking about that, I think I would have quit a long time ago. You know.
You mentioned flame. Don't they start the Olympics carrying torches?
They do. They do. Yeah, the cauldron. They absolutely do. They light the cauldron before every Olympic Games. Absolutely. Yep.
What about belief? So and immense failure. So take Roger Federer, take Michael Jordan. Federer almost quit pro tennis when he was a teenager because he had talent, but he just kept losing. He just kept losing. He literally almost quit.
Wow.
Michael Jordan got famously rejected from his basketball team when he was in high school. Right? Have you had experiences like that? And if so, how have you seen other people? If so, how can one rekindle that flame and keep going?
Yeah. I think belief is so important, and you always have to have people around you as well that believe in you, right? Your support system is so crucial. My parents, my family, my wife, all these people that when you have these negative thoughts, when you have these doubts, because they're constantly there, right? When you have setback, when you have accidents, when you have crashes. I mean, for me, I was trying to be number one in the world, and it was becoming difficult. And I went to the Olympic Games in Athens in 2004. I was 5th in the world going in. And I ended up finishing the race. I finished 9th. I was top American at the Athens Games in 2004, but I was crushed because I came off the Sydney Olympics in 17th. I was happy to be there. I was 24 years old. It was our first Olympics. I was the big fish in the small pond. I was the top American, and I thought, oh, this is great. It's good enough. But then I wanted to be more. I wanted to be better. And that belief of wanting to get better and that pursuit of it, 28 years old, everyone's telling me I'm going to win a medal. I've got all the T-shirts, the branding. I'm ready to win this medal. And the course wasn't necessarily suited for me, the Athens course. I finished 9th, again, top American, but I'm crushed. And after the race and later on that year, it took some serious introspection for me, like looking within and thinking to myself, what can I really do to get better? What can I overcome and not be the best in the country, but really try to be the best in the world? And for me, my diet was a big thing. I mean, I would eat whatever I wanted to, whenever I wanted to. I mean, I was that kid that I burned. That's what I did. I swam, bike, and run all day, and therefore I can eat whatever I want. Well, I wasn't treating kind of what goes in. You get what it's like an engine. Your body is like an engine, right? So what you're eating, what you're putting in is like fuel for that engine, right? Like a race car, like a finely tuned race car. And I wasn't thinking of it as my body like that, but I started to, in 2005, I started to read some more nutritional materials, read about the nutrition timing of actually when I was taking in protein within 30 minutes of my workout, right? So you just did a workout, a hard run, 10-mile workout on my running. And so within 30 minutes, if I'm putting in protein, I'm replenishing those muscles. They're feeling better. So it's not always it's that consistent training that you need. It's not that one huge workout a week. It's the fact that you can do 3 within the same sport every week, right? 3 hard swim sessions, 3 hard bike sessions. Yeah. And so I changed my nutrition, I changed my diet completely around in 2005. I went from Krispy Kreme donuts and fast food to much more health-focused, health-conscious in the timing of when I was eating lean proteins. And became number 1 in the world in 2005, 2006, the next 2 years. But it was the mindset of really wanting to be the best, overcoming the fact that I was 9th in the world, which most people would think, oh, you finished 9th in the Olympic Games, that's great. But for someone that wants to be the best, that's not great. You want to be number 1 in the world. What is that pursuit like? And so for the next 2 years I was, and I enjoyed that entire time between the 04 and 08 Games.
I have a couple things.
Yes.
Andre Agassi, pro tennis player, when he was younger, he said that he had a diet of pizza and cheeseburgers.
Yes.
And he changed eventually.
Yeah,
also.
Absolutely.
And about not being complacent with your high rank of number 9, right? And wanting to do better and better. I had a previous guest on my show called Dr. Garagazlu, and this part of the interview got cut off, but we talked about Ferraris. He's a Ferrari fan. Uh-huh. And the guy who started the Ferrari company, who may have died at this point, he was asked, what is the best Ferrari you've made in your life? And he had, many that you could choose from. He said, the best Ferrari is the one I'm making tomorrow. And I like the idea of things always getting better, right? As an athlete, you end up aging out of it.
Yes.
And then you can't do it.
Absolutely.
Right? At some point.
Yes.
But I would hope in terms of satisfaction and life and everything, are the best days for you ahead of you? Do you feel all the work you've put in, all the great memories have now brought you into this strong, disciplined, healthy, good eating, disciplined person who can do amazing things with whatever else you're going to do?
Yeah, I hope to think that. I must admit the transition process has been very challenging. I just officially retired just this year in 2000 or last year in 2018. Made my announcement, got inducted to the USA Triathlon Hall of Fame, so it was a big deal. But I hadn't raced in 2 years. I actually haven't physically raced in 24 months. And so that the idea of this is my only profession, making a living doing this, right? From all my sponsorship money and having an agent, and this is all I did. I supported my family, have now 5 kids, and did that all from being a professional triathlete and loved it. And having to transition out of that and having that identity, sometimes we get wrapped around the athlete, right? Walking around and being like, oh, he's the Olympian, he's the guy that travels the world and makes a living doing triathlon. There's major satisfaction in that. And it becomes, you're not ego driven, but it becomes an ego thing somewhat, because people refer to you as that. You're the athlete, that's who you are, that's why we're here talking about my career, right? But the transition to life after has been very challenging for me, just to kind of unwrap myself out of all of it. Because I'm a big passion guy, I'm a big, light the flame kind of guy, and I had that from a very early age, right, with the sport of triathlon. From the age, probably I would say 11 and 12, when it really started to get like excited about the sport, and wanted to do big things with it. That carried me all the way through 41 years old, And so what is going to be that next pursuit and that next passion? So I'm taking my time and kind of figuring that out, like what does it look like now next? But I definitely think as far as overall health and well-being and my mindset and my dedication and my grit factor, right? The ability to actually write down my goals and go out there and achieve them and see them achieved is a big deal, and not everyone has that. And people need to go through failures like I have and have injuries that put them in the hospital for 6 surgeries and go through these difficult trials and tribulations and come out these valleys on the other side, because we're all gonna get knocked down, right? Life is gonna take us all for different turns and twists that we're not expecting or that we might not even like, right? Setbacks along the way. It's not the setback that's the difficult thing, it's how you're reacting to it. How do we actually overcome it and get through it? What's your response to the setback? And so for me, the response always needs to be, how can I get better? How can I improve? That Ferrari, what's the best Ferrari? It's the one that's being made tomorrow, that one. And so that's my mindset as well. I haven't found that exact passion yet, to be honest with you. There's a couple things I enjoy doing, I'm involved in kids triathlon and youth. I love to see kids active, healthy and active, and exercising. I think too many kids are on videos and on screens and on their phones and not moving outside.
Which is more difficult.
What is?
Moving outside. Moving your body is more difficult than moving your eyes.
Absolutely. Much more difficult. You're right.
And delayed gratification.
Delayed gratification. That's exactly right. Yeah. And so that's the thing. They're not waiting to say the week or the 2 weeks or the month or the year it takes for them to see improvements. They want to see that dopamine rush right away, right? And so I want to see kids moving, and I would love to I'm doing stuff with kids triathlons around the country, selling the sport to schools, and we're putting on some big races, so getting sponsors involved and stuff like that. Doing some speaking engagements with the United States Olympic Committee, doing stuff like that. My biggest excitement right now is with the United States Olympic Museum, Olympic and Paralympic Museum and Hall of Fame. It's being built out in Colorado Springs, Colorado, where I live now, currently reside with my family. It's Olympic City, USA, you should know that. Because the headquarters, the United States Olympic Committee headquarters is headquartered there.
Is that what brought you there?
The Olympic Training Center brought me there, exactly right. It's the main Olympic Training Center in the country is in Colorado Springs. 6,000 feet, so we're at altitude. And when you train at altitude, the main reason why they have a training center there is because of the altitude. And it increases red blood cell count. And when you increase your red blood cells, more oxygen goes to the muscles. More oxygen goes to the muscles, you can run faster, you can jump higher, less lactic acid. And so
that carries when you're in regular altitude.
It does. When you're at sea level, absolutely. Okay. It has, I would say, has an effect about a month span of a real strong benefit. Mm-hmm. Say 3 to 5 weeks, that length of time. So people go there for altitude camps. It's hard to recover up at altitude at 6,000 feet, so it's a little bit more difficult. But that's one of the reasons why they have it there. But
that's good though. It's like military training.
It is.
I mean, they'll just push you really hard. You'll be extremely uncomfortable.
Yep.
very uncomfortable.
That's how it's supposed to be, right?
And especially for something that's mostly purely endurance, that's what you need.
It is, because when I came down to sea level, I felt like I could just go and run for days. Absolutely, because I just could breathe so much oxygen in. So the museum is being built up there, the Olympic Museum and Hall of Fame. It's all in one building, 60,000 square foot building, right there off of I-25, which is our I-4 here in Orlando, same kind of highway running, connecting Denver to Colorado Springs. And they're expecting about 350,000 guests to come through there every year. It's going to be an amazing, interactive, accessible museum, very high-tech RFID technology. So you kind of go in there and create your own experience. Like if you're big into tennis and swimming and maybe track and field, those are your sports, you can say this is the country that I'm from, or this is the state that I reside in. It can cater that experience to highlight Olympians from that state and in those sports that you cater to. So it's or that you enjoy watching when you watch the Olympic Games. It'll have all the best Olympians from the Miracle on Ice 1980 hockey team to the Michael Johnsons, the runners and the basketball players and the skiers and all these amazing athletes. The Bodie Millers, they'll have them all in there, as well as the Hall of Fame too. So it'll be very accessible mobility wise for wheelchairs, for sight. For deaf, so it's pretty exciting, revolutionary building that's going up. It's possibly being built. About another $9 million, $10 million to be raised, and I'm on the board of that. So it's an exciting project that I get to kind of put my passion, that Olympic passion, that still keeping that flame lit, as to kind of house the place where they can create the dreamers as the kids walk through there to see, oh, wow, I can walk around this building and look and see this is what I want to do. I want to be Dan Jansen, that speed skater. I want to be that sprint athlete. Allison Felix. Those kind of athletes to kindle those dreams and to house a place where the best athletes have accomplished the greatest feat. So it's an exciting project.
It needs people like you for that pursuit to continue. I'm personally not a triathlete, but I'm a tennis player, and I know that tennis is way outside of me. Right, you go to any Walmart, any Dick's Sporting Goods, you'll see tennis rackets. There's probably millions of tennis balls sold every day around the world, something like that.
Yes.
And it's because lots of people work on committees like this, former players, current players.
Yes.
And as a result, I can go anywhere I want, get a tennis racket, get it strung, find someone to play with, and do what I love.
Yep. They just want to keep on passing it on to the next generation. I think it's part of the carrying that torch.
So let's talk about the glory a little bit.
Yeah.
So you've been watched by the world in 4 Olympics. If I remember correctly, in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, Jimmy Page played Whole Lotta Love. Were you there for that?
I was at the opening ceremonies?
Yes.
I was.
Yes.
Yep.
So I would love to see Jimmy Page. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but you got to see him.
Yep.
Right? President Bush was there. I saw him in the stands as well.
He was. Him and his dad, yes. HW as well.
Him and his dad.
Yep.
What's it like? You're in front of the world. It's not Tampa Busch Gardens anymore. It's the world. It's not America. It's the world.
It's pretty exciting, I must admit. I mean, it's one of those things that we go through this processing, and as we're in San Francisco getting ready to go over there, they basically tell you there's going to be 1 billion people watching the opening ceremonies, 1 billion people. And one is just to kind of, walk behind the flag with pride. I mean, you didn't have to tell me that, more than once. I was just excited to be there. And it was my first games that I walked in was 2008. I competed in 2000 in Sydney. We competed on the second day, so my event was too close to opening ceremonies that I didn't actually get to walk in those games in Sydney, the opening ceremony. I didn't get to walk in the opening ceremony in Athens because we were on the 12th day now, and I wasn't in country yet. I was still training in Florida here before we flew over there. So I flew over on the 4th day. The games were already going on, so I wasn't there. So I was getting ready to qualify for the Olympic Games in 2008 for Beijing, and I was the last person to get on the team to make it. I was the 3rd athlete of 3 to make the men's team. And I was thinking to myself, the pressure, I was like, wow, if I don't make this team, this could be the end of my Olympic run, totally. And I hadn't even walked, because I was getting older. I was 32 years old. I didn't know if I would make 2012. And not many athletes miss a quad. Like if they were in 04, they don't make it in 2008 and then try to make it 2012. That's a long gap to go, to be out of the Olympic arena. And so when I told myself, I'm going to make this team and I'm going to walk in the opening ceremony. And I did, and I got to experience what China put on, the extravaganza they put on. Beijing being a communist country, they do things bigger and better than anyone. They have the resources and the funding that they had at the time to do it.
Why so?
Well, they just throw money at it, throw money and resources and people. I mean, there are volunteers everywhere you went in China, and they actually were a South Korean group actually taped the dress rehearsal, the opening ceremony, one part of it, and then aired it back in South Korea, about 60 seconds long. But they wanted the actual opening ceremony to be showcased to the world, brand new. No one had seen it, first time for everyone. So they cut that part out and redid it into the opening ceremony because people in Korea actually had already seen part of what the rehearsal was looking like. So they revamped that whole 60-second piece. Mm-hmm. That's how crazy they were and excited they were about having this be just big and grand and just, being in the bird's nest. They created all these facilities and these stadiums for it. But walking in the tunnel, I was in the athletes' village. It was super hot that day. We were all in jackets and Polo Ralph Lauren jackets and suits. It's very businesslike. It's very serious an opening ceremony, right? It's not the party that closing ceremony is. It's a serious thing. And so we're walking in, we're coming into the tunnel, and someone starts chanting, USA, in the tunnel, and it's reverberating, echoing around, and it's just an amazing sense of pride and excitement that you feel as you're walking the tunnel with athletes like LeBron James and Kobe Bryant and the basketball team that I'm walking in with, Michael Phelps, Ryan Lochte. It was an amazing experience that I got to experience, and it'll be a memory I'll never take away. I didn't win a gold medal, but I walked an opening ceremony and got to experience what it is, the sense of pride, walking in with Team USA, with presidents and dignitaries there, watching this just this kind of spectacle that gets put on every 2 years, with the winter games coming off of it every 2 years, but the summer games are every 4 years. So that's what makes it so dramatic too. Yeah. If the race doesn't go well, it's not like all of a sudden you get a do-over the next weekend. This isn't like another World Cup event. Right. It's not another World Championship event. I mean, this is one that happens once every 4 years. So and
you better not oversleep.
And you better not. Yeah, exactly.
There's a Seinfeld episode.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. He's getting ready to trade. That's true. Yeah. No, it's very true. Double alarm that day.
And don't mix up the AM and PM.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And don't make the hotel guy mad if he's going to call you.
Right. Right.
Okay. All right. Sydney, Athens, Beijing, London. Which was your favorite?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, Sydney was definitely up there because it was the very first. I was, young and just excited, and just we were a new event. We got featured on the morning television shows that were there. They were asking us about the games. I got to go on to the morning shows. They're like, "Hey, you're a new event." It was us and women's pole vault, and they were like, "What do you think about the sharks in the harbor?" Was the very first question that I got from the reporter, and I was like, is the red light on? Is this live? Like the sharks in the harbor? I'm like, listen, there's 50 guys lined up. We're going to swim a mile around in the harbor. I'm one of 50. I'm not the best swimmer. I take my chances that I get eaten alive by a shark, So we're there, morning of. That's 4 days before the race. Morning of, we're there, race morning. We come an hour and a half before the race. There's guys full on in wetsuits and sonar guns. And I was like, over the race referee, and I was like, hey, what's the deal with the guys in the wetsuits and the sonar guns? Oh, it's okay. It's for your protection. The sharks don't like the sonar sound. And I was like, are there really sharks in the harbor? Like, are you serious? Like, it's total made for TV, right? You go over to watch Daytona Beach to watch NASCAR for the crashes, right? To see all the spectacle and the craziness. And apparently you watch triathlons to see if people get eaten alive by a shark. Yeah. So they marched them and frog marched them all out there, and they surrounded the whole thing. And I was just like, whatever, this is so crazy.
Look, they say just don't fear the shark, and the shark won't mess with you.
That's right. So I had that total mentality, like they're not going to totally mess with me.
Yeah, they can totally tell if you fear them or not.
Yeah. So there was 50 of us, and it was great, and it was 500,000 people there. It was amazing. I finished 17th, but I just had it was pre 9/11. It was a different time. It was much more open. Australia was a great host. The weather was perfect. 70s the entire 16 days. It was beautiful. So that was a great games of mine. Beijing was my best finish. I loved it because I finished 7th. I was top American. It was I had a sports hernia going in. But I probably could have been on the podium if I didn't have some injuries going in. So that was amazing. But then London was great too because it was very city-oriented games, and it was my last. And my son, my oldest son now, who was 5 at the time, got to come and watch me. My parents, my mom and dad, had been to all my competitions and all my Olympic games. My wife, who I was dating in Sydney, has been to all my Olympic games. So it's been a chance for not only for me to see the world, but for my friends and family, my sister, and all people to come and kind of see the world along with me. And it's been an amazing ride. And you don't get to where you are unless you had that support system around you to kind of guide you and believe in you during those downs and those valleys. Because it's like that iceberg, right? You know, the tip of the iceberg, you see the top of the iceberg, right? But you don't see all that's below the water. Right. It's all that people, that when people go on the podiums and they're crying, when they're hearing their anthem being played, we're crying because of the people that aren't there, that coach, that name that doesn't get recognized until a ceremony, sometimes years later, right? That's someone that drove you countless times to swim practice. My mom, who would always drive me, you know, my dad, who always believed in me. Those kind of things, that's what people get emotional, because they're not there on top of that podium. You are, but you're standing on top of their shoulders, right? And so I think people, no matter where you are in life, whatever you're doing in life, you need to realize you've got to treat others that way. That whether you want to be a mentor or whether you want to be that you're a mentee to somebody else, right? I mean, it's important to know that, just to treat others with respect, and to realize that just to be helping others get to where they want to try to get to.
All right, Hunter. So we've talked about a lot of the really good stuff, right, with athletics, traveling, and all that. What about some of the dark side? So I know in pro sports there's a doping problem, not specific to any sport. It can happen in anyone. What's your experience with getting tested, seeing it if you've seen it, the ethics related to cheating, and so forth?
Yeah, you know, for me, I grew up as a person that was never on my radar screen, right? I never wanted to cheat to be the best, right? I never thought that was never crossed my mind. But I know in cycling, it was always kind of prevalent. It was always kind of out there, right? People would talk about Lance Armstrong and the people in the cycling world, and it was just kind of an underlying current that just kind of what you had to do in order to get to where you needed to be, right? And I think sometimes when you think about doping, you just got to look at people, and if they're achieving things like the Tour de France, climbing mountains over 21 days and doing things that seem like they're too difficult to do, maybe it is sometimes in a lot of ways. And so for me, I got tested all the time. USADA, U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, is the one that does the test, along with WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency. And it's a really big deal. You have to basically tell them where you're going to be at least 1 hour during the day, every day, 365 days a year. You have to let them know for 1 hour where you'll be during that 1 hour.
So they can randomly
randomly knock on the door and come to your door and test you. And so for me, my hour was always in the morning, right? I always wanted to say, I'll be here between 5 and 6 in the morning, because I'll be heading out the door about 6:30 to head to swim practice, or 6:15. So between 5 and 6, I might be sleeping still, potentially, but at least I'll be there, and I know I'll be at my house or my hotel or wherever it is. So I would get some early morning knocks on the door, letting them know. And sometimes they wouldn't always do it during the hour. They would do it totally random and just try to find you. And if they didn't find you, it was okay. But if you had to say where you're going to be. If you say you're going to be there and they come to your house and you're not there, then it's like a missed test. If they do it 3 times, so they come to your house 3 different times and you're supposed to be there and you're not, then it counts them, because you're trying to elude the test and saying
3 times in a lifetime, or in a certain
3 times in a 12-month period. Exactly right. Yep, 3 times in a 12-month period. And so for me, I got tested so much one year. I was the most tested person across all U.S. Olympic sports. It was because you get tested out of competition.
Urine or blood tests?
Both.
Okay.
Blood started coming on later in the last half of my career, but urine was early on. And I got tested so much that my 4-year-old son, who was then 4, said when the guy would knock on the door, he'd be like, "Daddy, your friend's here." I mean, that's how often he knew this guy. And
I don't like needles. That would freak me out, the blood test.
It is. It is a little nerve-wracking, but they come with a blood specialist. So someone that's specializes in that will do it, and it's not a big deal. It's about a vial that's about that big. It's not much blood, not enough to actually hurt your workout. But once they come in contact with you, that doping officer can't leave your site. So say you had just gone to the bathroom and gone to the bathroom, and you were dehydrated and you just got done with the workout. They can follow you around. Say you had to go to a massage appointment or had to go to a doctor's office. They have to follow you around. You can't leave their site once they come in contact with you. And it could be
for 1 hour?
No, it could be for like 6 hours or 8 hours, or it could be for half a day, as long as it takes you to actually provide another urine sample. And it has to be enough of a urine sample to provide a decent amount in order to pass.
Wait. So why can't they just get it when they see you? And then
they can, but if you can't go, if the person actually can't provide the sample because they've just gone to the bathroom. Say I've just woken up in the morning, I've from my sleep, gone to the bathroom, and I come back, and now all of a sudden they knock on my door, and I'm like, oh, it's like I could have gone this sample 5 minutes ago. I would have had it for you right here, But now it's going to could take 2 hours. I don't know. So I'm trying to hydrate or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's It's a crazy thing. It's a crazy, but it has to be done. And it's, they say it's random, but it's really only, I think it's random, but it's random within the top athletes, right? I mean, so we're all in a pool, but only the best probably get tested the most, right? If you're providing great results, and then you get in competition testing too. So if you're in the top 3, if that competition is testing, the top 3 will get tested, as well as someone in the top 10 might get plucked out, like a 7th place person might get tested as well. So it's very high protocol. You have to have all your supplements that you're going to list out of what you're taking. Like I was heavy into beets, so I was taking beet supplements. A product called Elite, so I put that down. I put maybe if it was a over-the-counter medication, but you don't want to take many medications that you don't know what it is that you're getting, or else you could easily get randomly popped for something that it's that a lot of athletes use, right? They're like, oh, I was taking this, this vitamin, but it was in the same warehousing and manufactured in the same area that was with some other kind of thing that was illegal apparently. So they use that a lot.
I did want to ask about this, and that was an amazing segue to this topic, which is 3 years ago, Maria Sharapova, pro tennis player.
Yes.
She had you're aware of this?
I'm aware of that, yeah.
I think she was tested for she tested positive for something which she had been taking for a long time, which just at that time became outside of regulation.
Right.
And she got banned for 6 months or so. Now, Roger,
what did she say? Did she say that she didn't know?
I believe she said
that she wasn't aware that it was now being banned?
And she, something like that.
Okay.
And she emphasized that I have been taking this for a while and it was never
prohibited.
Problem.
Right.
Federer, now I don't know if he was addressing this specifically, but he said, I quadruple check everything.
Exactly.
Before I take it.
Me too.
So
100%.
What happens when you have a almost ambiguous case in the Sharapova case?
I think it falls on the athlete. In the end, it always falls on the athlete. So if it's ambiguous, it comes down to the athlete has to know what they're putting into their bodies. And so for me, there's other outside independent agencies that actually quality control the drugs, and they can basically say this product has been approved, that it's been made in this lab under these regulations, and so we can affirm that what it's saying is in there is that's the only thing that's actually in there. So it's been independently batch tested, which is expensive to do, but when you do that, you know what you're putting into your body. And so you can't just go and start taking random things, or you can't say, well, I didn't know it was this. You're supposed to know. It comes upon the athlete. And I think there's some very far-fetched circumstances. I mean, I think there's sometimes maybe if young men and there's like hair growth can be a potentially a marker for someone trying to mask taking drugs. So you could be taking a hair growth product, like some kind of pill for hair growth.
And taking dope?
And doping, but the hair growth product is the masking agent for the doping. But now they're testing to whereas if you're getting caught for the hair product, they're saying that now is becoming illegal to take as well.
Yeah.
But someone might be like, well, I'm balding, I have a receding hairline, I need to take this product. They might not know. So it could be some extenuating circumstances. But in the end, it falls on the athlete. The athlete has to know. And there's so much information out there for you. You can call up USADA on any time. You can email the website and just find out. Is this product, put in the names of the ingredients in the product. Is this illegal? Is this banned? Is this not banned? Is it prohibited? Is it not? And it'll tell you right there whether that specific name is or isn't. So it's really easy. And I'm more on the Federer line. Like and so I actually run the risk of like when I get sick, I don't hardly take any kind of cold medication.
Out of fear. Precaution
total precaution. So I'm on the other end. I would never get called in because I don't have anything in my body. Everything's just whole foods and nothing really else. Maybe an iron supplement. That's it. Yeah. So it's good. I mean, but you have to. The problem is, and this is the one thing that I think everyone probably should know, is that there'll always be cheaters because they're paying. There's so much money in it, right? There's so much money in sport and cheating that if they're going to pay the scientists and the drugs, because in order to actually test positive for something, you actually have to have a test for that drug that they're taking. If they're taking some synthetic steroid that they've masked up, right? The Balco situation, the Barry Bonds. He never would have got found out about, right? Him and Mark McGuire.
What was that?
It was in baseball. So these guys got caught. But a guy turned them in and said, hey, these guys, they found the drugs or whatever that in the lab or whatever, and said, you might want to test for this. They tested for it. They said, oh man, that's crazy. They come back and they tested for it, and then they realized that they were doing something illegal. They were doing this synthetic steroid that they were doing. It's now what they start doing now in Olympic competitions, they freeze your results for 10 years. Because basically the drug testers cannot catch up to the cheaters until like years later they realize, oh, that's what, so then your actually award gets stripped. Could be 4 years down the line.
So you're saying, so for example, theoretically, if athlete A got an Olympic
wins
gold in 2020,
2020 wins
it's
the gold
not
medal.
literally actually solidified until 2030.
Potentially, absolutely. They could in 2026 they could be like, they find some other things that, oh, these athletes were doing this back then. Let's test some of these athletes again. Let's test their samples. And they realize that one athlete that won in 2020 the gold medal, he was on drugs, and then they strip him. The problem is, how much money did he earn off that gold medal? How much fame did he earn off that from his country? How much all that stuff? Right. And so the poorer countries, a lot of these countries,
in a way, the disgrace ends up being, I mean, not necessarily equal, but the disgrace is huge as well for the downfall. It's like pride before the fall, almost.
It is, but the disgrace, the negative for actually doing it still isn't big enough. It's not as much. Right. It's not as much. And people from smaller countries, maybe from an Eastern European country, what's your negative? If you're a poor kid growing up on a farm, you're probably
excuse that.
They'll excuse it. They'll be like, oh, I got to take drugs because then I can be a hero and I can win the Triathlon World Championships, be maybe a multi-millionaire and come back and take care of my family. It's worth it to them. Whereas you have to have some kind of moral compass to realize this is not how we do things in this country, or just in general, it's not how you do. You don't cheat to win. That's not what sport's about, you know? And I never felt like in my sport of triathlon that I was ever in competition with other athletes that were cheating to the point where I couldn't win the race. Now that would be a defeating feeling, right? To know going in, you're like, man, I'm gonna go on this 100-meter dash, right? At the Olympic Games in the 100-meter final, and knowing that maybe a lot of those guys could be potentially on drugs and you're clean, the chance of you winning might not be very good.
You know what, Hunter? It takes the spirit out of the
It does. It does.
The thing is,
sport.
Remember you said that in a way the commercial side to sport is not the fun side, right?
It's true.
It's necessary for so many reasons to compensate people, to pay for these events and everything. And competition and to get to the top, I think, is a great and amazing thing. But when you start cheating, I mean, and this is simplistic, but like, you're not playing the game. Mm-mm. You're not, your spirit is not in it as it should be.
No.
You've zapped yourself of the feeling that you wanted to get out of it. Like, and I think the only explicit example I know is Lance Armstrong. And I'm trying to think of it from a perspective, let's say I was a cyclist cycling against him. I'm like, oh dang, he keeps beating me, beating me. I need to train harder. And it might be good that I keep training harder to beat someone on steroids, right? But how am I going to feel later if I get preemptively, post-emptively awarded some? I'm not going to care at that point. I'm like, this guy was cheating.
Yes.
I'm going to feel cheated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he's not just zapping his own spirit with this. He's cheating me.
He is. Everyone involved.
It's bad.
It's very bad.
But here's the thing. Like, look, the pickings are slim. The financial rewards are high.
Yep.
And the competition is so tough. And you compete in a sport that's on time.
Yes.
Right? You're dealing with fractions of a second.
It is. It's
so
true.
You're at a competitive disadvantage if you're not cheating against someone who is.
Absolutely, and that's what all the cyclists said. And that's why everyone in Lance's era and all that time, they were all cheating. They were all doing drugs. So then you could back it up and say, well, then it's back to an equal playing field. But some drugs are better than other drugs. I mean, the ones that can afford to pay top dollar for stuff, it is. It all comes down to financial gain and success. And then people that do cheat, they validate it. They excuse it. They say, well, I have to do this in order to get this. They basically tell themselves lies in order to think that it's still okay. And it's not. And
they believe it.
They believe it. They believe they're all their own lies. They believe that what they're doing is not wrong. And it's really bad. And I think it happens across all sports, and you see it everywhere. And the problem is the punishment has to fit the level of cheating. And I think in all sports we haven't quite gotten there. In the Olympic sports, I believe it's a 2-year ban, 2 years, and then the next time it's 4 years, or you're out entirely. Those are pretty strict guidelines, but still, for an athlete, a lot of athletes are willing to take the chance, and the testing and USADA, the anti-doping agency, has to have the best scientists and the best guys and the best funding in order to find out what people are actually doing. So, but it all comes down to money. It all comes down to financial reward, and so people want to be the fastest man on the planet. In order to do that, they might have to take drugs in order to do it, right? And so they'll validate it by saying, well, that guy's doing it, so therefore I have to do it. Well, no, you don't. You can be a champion to say, I'm not cheating, but I know he is, and this is why. And the problem is people don't do that. You don't speak out and tarnish someone unless you know for certain that's what's going on.
And then you're also going to end up in second place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's good that we have all the testing.
It is. The testing is very good.
I want to reflect in a where we are as a society, like a global society standpoint.
Yeah.
The fact that I think it's so. This is an ethical thing we're talking about. But I think from a scientific standpoint, the fact that by merit of being an athlete who can be one of the fastest people on the planet, you have the opportunity to fly first of all around. This is all science, right? Fly around the world, take your family, make a living off this, be broadcast to people around the world.
Yes.
The president sees you, Jimmy Page sees you.
Yes.
Right? You get, and not just you, but everybody, everyone who's involved with sports, right? There's these chemicals that can enhance you. Then there's the scientists who are trying to test you on that. And the fact that it all works so accurately, I think it blows the mind.
It's amazing. I mean, the precision of the technology that goes into sport is unbelievable. The recovery side of sport, what people are doing, what athletes are doing in order to try to go from workout to workout, it's impressive. And to do it on a day like the Olympic Games, for me, every 4 years, is what makes it such the magnitude of it and the excitement behind it, right? Everyone can downplay it, a certain race on a weekend, but to say the Olympic Games in Beijing, the Olympic Games in London is not my main goal that day or that year or that 4 years, it's a big deal. And so there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of science, there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of coaching that goes into it. But sport is, I trust it and I believe from my bottom of my heart that I was involved in a sport triathlon, that I never felt cheated. I never felt like I had to cheat in order to win. And that's a comforting feeling to know that I can still be the best. I can still be number one in the world. I can still, be on a Wheaties box, do these kind of fun things and still reach the highest level and not have to cheat to do so. And so that for me was an amazing feeling, a comforting feeling.
So the Olympics is a set of a few weeks every 4 years.
Yes.
What is in between? So obviously you're training, right? But how do you make a living otherwise? And also, are there other triathlon events that you compete in that are compensated, right? Like if someone wanted to be a triathlete,
sure,
right? What does that look like?
So for me, I remember it is kind of complicated. People always ask me the question, like, how do you make a living doing? One, they don't even know that there's an actual international sport like this, right? That we can. And for me in triathlon, I do the Olympic distance. So my distance is a 0.93 mile swim, or just under a mile swim, 24.8 miles of cycling, and a 10K run, 6.2 miles of running. That's my Olympic or international distance. There's also the Ironman, which you see in Kona, which is much longer and an all-day event. Mine's almost a sprint race, an hour and 45 minutes for me to complete this race. And so people always ask, well, so are there prize money competitions? Is it just the Olympic Games? Because in the Olympic Games, it's not a prize money event the Olympic Games isn't. You get bonuses from sponsors and all that kind of stuff. So we would race in a uniform, right? Like a Lycra form-fitting uniform, and it'd be like a NASCAR. So you'd have your jersey, and then you'd have Nike on there if you were a Nike athlete, which I was. Toyota's on there. I was a Toyota athlete. Hy-Vee, I was a Hy-Vee athlete. Polo Ralph Lauren was the very first sponsorship I signed right out of college. I'm at Wake Forest University. It's my senior year, 1998. I fly up to New York City because I sent resumes out to Polo Ralph Lauren, Tommy Hilfiger, and Nautica were my three companies because I just wanted to dress for success outside the arena of triathlon, outside the competition part, just on the podiums, to the airplanes, just look nice because that was my thing. I wanted to look nice. And so for me, I sent them a resume. They're saying, hey, why don't you fly up here, tell us more? And they're like, do you realize that we have a mountain biking line? We have a cycling line. We already have a mountain biking team. And I was like, I had no clue about that. And I said, this is perfect. You guys already make cycling gear. That's one of the harder things to make. You've already got the Lycra and the form-fitting outfits. It's RLX is their competition line, their athletic line. And so I was part of the very first Polo Sport Ralph Lauren triathlon team. They took care of me from head to toe. It was my very first sponsorship. I got bikes through them. I got clip bars through them.
Do you need to be Olympic caliber in order to get all that?
I did. I had to show that I had just won the Amateur Nationals the year before. I was graduating. They knew the Olympic Games were coming up in 2000. They were an Olympic sponsor. Polo Ralph Lauren is an Olympic sponsor. So they felt like there was a lot of ties to that. I couldn't just be fifth best in the country. I had to show that I was the best, and they saw that. And so they invested in 2 men and 2 women. That was my first deal. I went out to Colorado Springs, had free housing, free food. So my sponsorship wasn't great, but it wasn't bad, and my expenses were really low because I had free housing and free food at the Olympic Training Center. And I just wanted to totally try to make a living doing it. And I did. I ended up signing a Nike deal after the Polo Ralph Lauren deal left in 2001. After Sydney, I signed a Nike deal, which is the coolest thing for a young kid growing up, to be able to walk into a Nike store and get whatever shoes he wanted, unlimited.
As a Nike athlete, you're in league with Michael Jordan, Serena Williams, formerly Roger Federer, Nadal, Sampras, LeBron, Nike. Tiger, everyone's Nike.
It's pretty cool. As a kid, like I said, as a kid growing up, it was a sponsorship that I just absolutely loved. And so they paid me to race in their uniform, to travel around the world, and to win races. And I did. And then, so you get paid from endorsements, from sponsorships, from the Toyotas, the Nikes, the General Mills, the Wheaties, the Hy-Vee Corporation, which is like a Publix of the Midwest. All these different companies paid me, Clif Bar paid me to represent their brand, like a NASCAR, like you kind of see. And so I did that. 80% of your funding should come from there. 90% of your income should come from there in a year, should come from endorsements. You want to leave the last 10% only up to prize money, because if you get injured or something happens to you throughout the year, you have a bad year, you don't want to have all your money have to rely on prize money. And our prize money events are $5,000 to win, maybe $10,000 to win.
What type of events? Like just regular triathlons?
Regular international Olympic distance triathlons. And I can do between 12 and 15 in a year. So I can do 15 races and try to win 5 to 10 grand. But it's like golf. You might only win 2 or 3 races in 1 year.
And the most you can make off that is, I'm being liberal here, like maybe 200,000.
That would be
like maybe
amazing.
Right.
That would be amazing.
Right.
Most aren't doing that. I would say probably a good year would be maybe 50.
Yeah.
On prize money.
Yeah.
In prize money. You want to have the other come from sponsorships. But there were a few races. There was a race called Battle of the Sexes. Lifetime Fitness put it on. It was in Minneapolis. It was the 18 best athletes from around the world. Girls, men versus women, girls versus boys. And they would start the women out a certain amount of time in front of the men. And the goal was to have the women, it was about 11 minutes or so. They had this calculation they came up with. And they started the race. They did the mile swim, the 24.8 miles of cycling, and they finished. And they wanted to have the man chasing down the woman almost in the finishing chute to have it like a photo finish. That was the goal, with the theoretical time advantage. Well, the woman won the first 4 years, and they were fighting over $200,000 prize purse was our prize to win. Not for the whole prize purse, but for the winning prize purse was $200,000, which for our sport was a really big deal. Like that's the big Happy Gilmore check, right? That's the check where you're like, wow, that's a lot of money.
Right.
So the girls won the first 4 years. A guy won in 2005, and I told my wife, because all the other races are $10,000 to win, $200,000 seems like a bit of a jump the shark. Like you don't really need that much in order to get there, right? So I told my wife, I go, I need to really try to win it. I've been trying to win the race, but try to win it before they actually canceled the event and say we're gonna do something else. Go somewhere, sponsor going somewhere else. And sure enough, I won it in 2006. I had just bought my first house. We were pregnant with my first child, and I won $200,000 and a RAV4, a Toyota RAV4. It was unbelievable. It's
a great family car.
It was a great family car. It worked out perfectly for me. And it was exciting that I got to win the biggest prize purse event in our sports history. And I did it again in 2014 at the Hy-Vee Triathlon. They had another event that was $100,000. That was a little bit, but it was an amazing event that I won as well. So prize money you can do really well, but you have to be one of the best in order to do it, right? And in triathlon, there's no middle class. So there's a few of us that make a good living that can support our entire family doing it. There's no middle class. There's no one that's making, say, $40,000 to like $80,000, right? There's no $30,000 to $75,000, and then the rest of them are just like at the training center. They're on their uncle's couch. They're just, how do I get from here to really making it, you know?
Right.
And so I was fortunate enough for 18 years to get off my dad's payroll as quick as I possibly could, because his whole thing was like, so what's the plan here? Like, what's the end game? I mean, how are you gonna, I don't think parents can really maybe visualize the fact that, or dream as big as the fact that can you make a living really doing this? And I'm like, well, just give me a shot. Give me a couple years. give me some backing, right out of college, give me some backing. And if I, can eventually get this thing going off the ground, I won't call you up anymore, for a credit card enhancement or whatever it is to help me out. And sure enough, I got off, within 18 months, I was off my parents and was doing my own thing and didn't really ever have to rely on them. And it was great.
Well, speaking of, you've been on the cover of Wheaties.
Yes.
And we have
Yes.
2 of those boxes here.
I have.
Were these purchased at a grocery store, or did you get these boxes
specially?
No,
I went and bought these. I went and bought this one. This one's pretty cool because it's got, I got to put AT Children's Project, which was an organization that I was with and supporting these girls that have ataxia telangiectasia on the side of the box so they get exposure as well.
Yeah.
That was really cool. And these are all pictures from me at my Olympic trials race in 2008 for the Beijing Games.
Okay.
That was me. So there's Toyota on there. Spyro, that at the time was a running shoe that I was wearing, Amino Vital. So 2 different boxes, and then this one, this was in 2008. This one is in 2009. What's cool about this box is that you can see me here, along with some pretty high-profile athletes. Kevin Garnett played basketball for the Boston Celtics. Peyton Manning played football for the Indianapolis Colts and the Denver Broncos. Go Broncos! That's my team out in Colorado. And then we have Albert Pujols, who is a strong Christian, played for the St. Louis Cardinals and now plays for the Los Angeles Angels. So basketball, football, baseball, the 3 big sports represented. And then Brian Clay, Olympic gold medalist in decathlon for 2008 Beijing Olympics. So we from the Beijing Games and the Beijing Olympics.
You said it was decathlon?
Decathlon.
What's
decathlon.
That?
It's 10 sports. Olympic sports.
So like a decathlon.
Decathlete. Yep.
That's insane.
Decathlon. Yeah, it is insane.
Wow.
And so 2-day event. He was the Olympic gold medalist in decathlon.
Wow.
And then myself. So the whole thing was, we're going to do a commercial, film you guys, take pictures. And they called me up and they said, hey, do you want to be a part of this? And I'm like, this would be great. They're like, well, we want to use you as the everyday guy. And I'm like, what do you mean the everyday guy? Well, like people can relate to you.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I'm like, well, how are they going to relate to me? Well, because you swim, you bike, you run. Everyone does those things. Like people go out and exercise. They can empathize with you, right? They're not going to go out and play football in their backyard, put on the helmet and pads, and feel like what Peyton Manning does. They can't feel the NFL. They can't feel professional basketball. They can't slam dunk, but they can ride a bike maybe as far as you can and that kind of stuff.
There must be an element of personality as well.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's what pretty much got me on the box. So they're like, you're going to be the everyday guy. I'm like, well, I run a 4-minute mile. People can't relate to that. I shave my legs for a living. They can't relate to that. So I'm like, no, maybe they can't, So I'm the everyday guy. They're like, we're going to put you on the box and we're going to barely put you on the fold. So if you see, I barely make the crease. I'm on the edge of the box.
They've got orange cutting into your body.
Yeah, they got orange cutting into my body, exactly. So my role wasn't to sell the cereal, which took the total pressure off. Because this Wheaties fuel was made towards men, geared towards men, black box. Jay, this was your cereal box. You're supposed to walk into Publix, say, looks pretty cool. I want to purchase that box. I'm going to grab it. The problem is, black, if you notice, does not appeal to taste. There is no black in cereal boxes. This is very unique and kind of edgy.
It looks like a Gatorade. It looks like a Gatorade photo.
Yes, it does. You're right. It does. And who doesn't buy cereal? The men. We don't go shopping. The wives, the spouses, the other women go do the shopping. So it wasn't geared towards them. So it lasted 6 years. 2009. It started in 2009 is when it started off, and 6 years later, it's no longer. Hence, you can only get the original Wheaties.
So any day anyone walks into a supermarket, they can get this.
They could have gotten that.
So this is in like every supermarket.
It was. Wow. Across the country.
Wow.
Yep.
So, okay, and to get on the Wheaties box, either here or there,
yes,
right, you need to have a level of like recognizability or fame that people know who you are, right? So where did you get in this whole fame business?
I mean, you do. You do have to get to a level of fame that people know who you are. It was the time that I was #1 in the world from 05 to like 07. During those years is when I got on the box. I was the best in the world. And it's also about who you know. So like I said, one of my sponsors was Hy-Vee Corporation. They're the private grocer in the Midwest. They're based out of Des Moines, Iowa. They're like the Publix of the Midwest, private company. And I knew the CEO. They were a sponsor of mine. And so he made a phone call. The CEO did, or he was the chief marketing officer at the time. Rainey Edeker made a phone call to General Mills and said, hey, we sponsor this guy named Hunter Kemper. He's the top triathlete in the world. Have you ever thought about putting a triathlete on your Wheaties box? Because he could be so relatable to everyone that's out there, right? And so they're like, we haven't really thought about that. We put, more high fame celebrities on there, the Michael Jordans, right? The Pete Samprases, those kind of guys on there, but not someone that people might not truly recognize, right? Like be a household name, right? So they said, yes, we'll do it. Sounds great. That's how I got on the box. That was my first box. And then I got from there, I was able to get on that one because of the likability factor and being still best in the world got me onto another box. So it is. You have to reach a level of fame, but it's still about who you know and opportunities, right?
Right.
I mean, we all have that.
Right. So does it come down to like you get like, so let's say that sells for like $2, right?
Yes.
Or $2.50. Do you get like a quarter of a cent or something for every one that's sold?
You didn't get that, but you got a nice sponsorship packages. It was definitely worth it to be on the box for sure.
Yeah.
And you got as much Wheaties as you wanted to eat, so which is a bonus.
Yeah. Great. So okay, so we talked about a lot of professional things, right, within your life and sports in general. What about life in general? This is back to Hunter, the person.
Yeah.
So you've had your wife, or you've the woman that you are married to since at least 2000, right?
Started dating in 2000, yes.
Did you meet her through the sports?
I did. She was an Olympic level volleyball player. So she played volleyball at Michigan State University. She was a 2-time All-American. She's a Hall of Fame athlete at Michigan State. Stud volleyball player. Went to Colorado Springs in 1997. We met in 2000. Our first date was the morning she got cut from the Olympic USA national team. She was told that she would not go to the Sydney Olympic Games in 2000, and we went on our very first date that night. So she was a very vulnerable place, a good shoulder for me to lean on, or for her to lean on me, and my jokes went over really well that night. And so it was good. I mean, we hit it off right away, and the reason why I think my career has lasted so long is because she can relate to what it is I do. She's played professional volleyball at the highest level. She played overseas in Italy for a year. She's played domestically here for a year. So her career ran from 1997 to 2003, her professional volleyball career. Didn't make Olympic Games, was an Olympic alternate for 2000, but can relate. So therefore, growing up as I'm competing and racing around the world, she allows me to sleep with earplugs in when our kids are little, right? I mean, this is humbling for me not to be able to participate in the middle of the night, to get up and to change the kid dirty diapers and go through all that, because sleep is so important to success when training for an Olympic Games, right? So
Sampras would sleep 12 hours a night.
Huge.
And he would, if there was a light on, like, you know, the TVs sometimes have like a one little red light on.
Yes.
He would cover that. He needed pitch black darkness.
Pitch black, yeah.
He's extreme, but
12 hours.
But the point remains.
Absolutely. For me, naps in the middle of the day was a secret to my success. I would take a 30-minute nap or a 45-minute nap in the middle of the day and get everything dark and do the exact same thing. I mean, now people can say that about their jobs, but sleep was a big component to it, and she allowed me to do that. She allowed me to take the pressures off and just worry about sport and not worry about all the daily bills and the grind of what everyday life was like. And so she was a huge partner in my success, and because she can relate to what it is that I was dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, and those things sport, too, like, they can drive you crazy.
Absolutely.
Right, and even if everything's going according to plan, stuff can fall out of place.
Totally.
And if you're thinking about that, it's just
mental
energy.
Absolutely.
Mental energy, you know?
100%. It's huge.
Interestingly enough, Roger Federer met his wife at the Sydney Olympics in 2000.
He did.
And she was
I did not know that.
They were both representing Switzerland.
Uh-huh.
And her career ended because of injury. And then she ended up taking a similar role within his career.
That's a very similar role.
Very similar role.
I mean,
she's the business manager.
Totally.
She's probably the one they call when they want to put him on cereal boxes.
Absolutely. My wife as well. Yep. Then to the agent. So it was nice. It was nice to be at that level where you could even have an agent, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Great. Well, so what are you doing? How did retirement start? Why did you choose to retire? Were you not hitting the same numbers? You know, like, is it getting too tough on you life-wise? Like, what happened?
I think ultimately the drive and the passion and the flame kind of slowly went away. And ultimately, I tried to qualify for 2016. I was 40 years old, but Father Time caught up with me, and I got a toe injury on my left big toe, and wasn't able to compete. And I was part of the last 5 athletes remaining for the Olympic trials process. 3 were going to go, and I was one of the 2 that got left off. And it was my first games that I had not been a part of. But I was trying to be the only triathlete in our sports history to go to all 5 Olympic Games that we've had so far, to be the only athletes gone to 5. There's been only 2 athletes that have done 4, myself and Simon Whitfield in Canada.
That's been triathlon.
In the sport of triathlon. There's been other Olympians that have gone to 6 or even 7 if you're a shooter or maybe equestrian, other like more technical sports, right? There's been some volleyball players that have gone to 5 and 6. Gymnastics, there's been, I think, another country that's gone to 7. So, but in my sport, I'm only one of 2 people in the world to go to 4 games, and then it was trying to go for my 5th. But the desire to not knowing that the medal was no longer a chance. I was too old to actually think that I could actually win a medal in my heart. But I was just going back to make a team. That bar wasn't big enough. That goal wasn't grand enough. And so for me, I get up in the mornings and I miss workouts, or the workout wasn't going well, and then I would just back off and say I can do it tomorrow. It wasn't a seized everyday mentality. It wasn't enjoying the grind. It was looking, is there something else I could be doing? What else should I be doing? Those kind of things. So eventually, like you said, I think you said earlier, life just kind of catches up with you, And for me, if I could still do it at the level I could, but I'm 42 years old now and I can't compete with 26-year-old athletes that are just, their bodies are totally different places than where I am.
And it becomes a spiral as well. In the same way you had an upward spiral maybe 20 years ago
Yes.
where you're like, oh, I just got the sponsorship. Oh,
Yes.
I'm getting better. Oh, I can still get way better. Oh, look, I can actually work harder.
Yep.
You see results, makes you work harder. See results, makes you work harder.
Absolutely.
On the descent, you start seeing, oh man, no matter how hard I train, my time is decreasing.
Right.
You feel worse. Like, oh man, I don't want to work out today.
It's true. But my descent wasn't too long. It was actually pretty short and pretty quick. And for me, because I was in a sport that was able to last a long part of my career, I mean, triathlon, you peak in your mid-30s. So I was lucky to be in a sport that lasted 20 years. I could have been in a sport that maybe, your career is up to mid-20s and then you're done,
Mm-hmm.
But I think my descent was probably the last 3 years, 39, 40 years old, right around there is probably when, at my London Games, I was running my best times ever in 2012 when I was 36 years old. Mm-hmm. Even though I finished 14th, I was still training the best. I was still seeing those results where I was like, man, my track times are better than they were when I was 34. This is amazing. Or when I was number 1 in the world,
Yeah.
So.
Well, all athletes age out of it.
Absolutely.
You're one of the many who've been in the Olympic Games and pro sport.
It's true.
So what's your profession now? So you talked about how you work with the Olympic Committee and so forth. Is that what you like? What does life look like now, on all regards? You live in Colorado Springs. You work heavily with Olympics. Mm-hmm. Is that what you do now?
So I kind of piece it all together. So I basically I'm on the board of the Olympic Museum. Mm-hmm. So I do that. I do speaking gigs with the Olympic Committee. So I travel around the country and speak to guys about the Olympic Games, maybe people that we're trying to fundraise for the Olympic Foundation. So I'll do stuff like that. I'll do stuff with Kids Triathlon, so I'll get paid and kind of make a little bit of a living and earning doing that as far as on the sponsorship side. So I'll try to bring in revenue. There's 5 races that we do. One's in Houston, one's in Dallas, one's in Jacksonville, one's in Boston, and one's in Atlanta. Those are the 5 events. It's not what I started. It started in 2009, but I've come on to enhance it, to try to bring a bigger spotlight to it. LA Fitness has come on board as a sponsor.
That's my gym.
So There you go. Perfect. They'll be sponsoring hopefully this year as well. And so I'm there to try to bring in new blood and new sponsorship and new eyeballs to the Kids Triathlon family setting that we're trying to create with these events. So that's my role in doing that. So I do kind of a whole bunch of different things where I'm making money, but speaking, the Kids Triathlon side, doing stuff with the board of the United States Olympic Museum, and are my main focuses right now. But I've done well enough in the sport to kind of allow myself to it's not enough. I'm not making enough probably to support my family and 5 kids, right? I have a lot of going out right now, right? Bills and expenses, but it's enough to whereas I can stay afloat and maintain until I figure out what my next passion is. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to kind of talk to you and speak to you a year from now, just even 12 months, to have enough time to kind of find out what it is. And I have ideas of where I think I'm going. I'm very entrepreneurial. I've done it my own way. I never had a boss my entire career. It's always been me kind of figuring things out through sponsorship, through endorsements. And I love to kind of, I'm not going to be a 9-to-5 guy. I'm not going to be a guy that's going to sit in a cubicle and be behind a desk the entire day. I need to be out. I need to be with people. And I need to be talking and engaging and connecting with others. And so it'll be some kind of sales role, some kind of spokesman role, something along those lines, guiding something that I'm passionate about.
Well, I very much support sports in essentially every regard. And I think what you're doing right now is fantastic. And I think triathlete and Olympics clearly transcends just triathlete and Olympics.
Yes.
Right? It goes
Yes.
into nutrition and other things.
Yes.
Perhaps the work you do now could expand beyond triathlete into sports awareness, creating programs for kids maybe who couldn't have them, to make things more vibrant, more competitive, give more people a shot, and encourage people to do this, because obesity is a problem in the country.
It is.
While on one hand we have the most advanced science for training, science for doping, science for anti-doping, we also have people who don't look after their health.
It's true.
And it's a legitimate problem. 40% of adults over 20 in America are obese.
Absolutely.
This is statistics by the CDC.
Absolutely.
And I think
how
that
about childhood obesity? Where does it start? It starts early on in the home. 100%.
Right.
You're exactly right.
Right, and in terms of passing on the torch, and I mean, this is just food for thought, right?
Yep.
How it materializes is to be seen, but as far as passing the torch to future generations, not just of current people who could be Olympians, but other people who maybe could be Olympians if some things were to change.
Absolutely. No, I would love to do that.
You have the exposure, you have the experience, you
Yep.
have the knowledge,
Yep.
you have the status, you have everything.
I appreciate that. I mean, for me, I think that is ultimately where my passion lies, is with kids and youth and adolescents and getting kids active. Being a kid like myself when I was young, they don't have to be serious like me, right? They don't have to be like, there's only going to be one winner of the race and that's me. That mentality of I have to win. But I want to get kids moving and get kids active and get kids outside and moving and just for enjoyment. Because there really comes along a sense of excitement, and the fact when they accomplish something, an 11-year-old kid who doesn't do triathlon, doesn't know what it is, but can swim a little bit, and he can swim the 100 yards that it takes, or 50 yards, doesn't have to be very far. He can bike 3 miles and then run a half mile at the very end. How good is he going to feel when he accomplishes and gets that medal around his neck, no matter where he finishes? That sense of pride and sense of purpose that he accomplished something, even though he only exercised for 25 or 30 minutes, that's a big deal. And it really goes to the heart of a kid, that he can walk into school the next Monday and tell all of his friends that what he did that weekend. It's really, really cool. And I think gives kids a real sense of purpose and identity that they can look forward to, something that they're training toward, and a goal that they're trying to accomplish, right? And so the more we can get kids moving and outside and riding their bikes and then the kids can even reverse it and change the psychology of the parent, who might not be athletic or in shape and fit and healthy and maybe obese, but the kid's like, hey, I'm going to do this, and have my parents watch me and be like, hey, I can be fitter, I can be in better shape, I can be healthier, It's true.
Not only is that kid winning that medal after doing the work good, it's very importantly also not bad. Right? Like, it's not neutral, and not just good, it's not bad.
Right.
And a lot of times kids just fall into bad habits, bad traps, whether it's, drinking or whatever when they're in high school, whatever, eating unhealthy.
Yes.
And starting with one person, I mean, anything spreads.
Yep.
Right? The latest Star Wars movie, The Last Jedi, they end with this phrase, we are the fire that will light the spark of the rebellion, or something like that.
Yep.
And there's this spaceship that's flying through space, it goes through light speed like a shooting star, and there's this one kid on some random planet who just looks at the spaceship flying away, and you see this glimmer in his eye.
Yeah.
That's how the movie ends.
That's awesome.
This is after this whole story with Luke and Leia and all those old characters who are now mostly dead.
Yep.
But there's that next generation because they saw something amazing.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a position that you've held. And that's a position Federer has held for me. That's a position that any athlete can have for anybody else. And it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing.
Thanks. And I think that's a position that the museum can hold as well. The Olympic Museum, right, can hold those dreams in that 60,000 square foot building that people can walk in and they can see and they can say, I want to be just like that person and have a dream. Because that's where it's that childhood excitement that you see. It's when you get older in age and life wears you down that those dreams lose that flicker. You know, you don't want that to happen. And so for kids seeing that, even adults seeing that, to maybe rekindle something, a new passion would be exciting.
And they get worn down, then they become cynical,
Yes.
and then it rubs off on the kid.
It does.
The kid might not have the support. Like, let's take Hunter Kemper with different parents.
Right.
You might not be. You might not be here.
100%. I wouldn't be there.
The parents need to believe.
The parents need to be the ones that are the anchor, because the kids see so much by what their parents do and not do, by their actions and by their inaction, right? The kid. It's hard to have the kid be the athletic kid if their parents are always the ones sitting on the couch and they're the ones playing video games or whatever,
Right.
or not exercising, or not walking and being healthy,
Right.
or not leading a healthy lifestyle. It totally starts within the home, and so I mean, it's relationships, it's mother and father, it's all of that needs to start, and so it is. I mean, I wouldn't be nearly where I am today without supportive parents, people that believe in you, because parents can be opposite too. They can be dream killers. They can be the ones that are saying, oh, you're not good enough. You can't, oh, give up on that. That's not worth it. You should go on to do this. And the kid's like, but my passion is this. Shouldn't I try that?
Yeah.
Shouldn't I go where I love what I love? Well,
Right.
you should. And that's, as a parent, my biggest thing is I want my kids to do all things. I don't know instruments. I'm not very vocally inclined. I can't sing very well, but I want them to experience as much as they can, that they can at least identify what it is that they're good at, and then foster it, and then cultivate it and help them along the way. That's what we do as parents. You want to guide them along to say, hey, listen, as a kid, what are your talents? What are your gifts? What do you love? Mm-hmm. You don't want them to be 18 years old and feel like, oh, I don't really love anything. I just kind of, it's all okay.
Right.
You want them to get excited about something.
Well, speaking of supportive parents, right? I know you because I know your dad, Tom Kemper.
Yep.
I know him through Toastmasters. He's been somewhat of a mentor for me. He's given me amazing advice on my most important speech so far, which is an American Unity speech.
Yes.
Garen, my second guest on the show, he is the official mentor of Garen. So he's helping everyone out. He orchestrated this. He set up this room. He got us this room.
Oh,
and
that's cool.
Here we are.
That's
so
cool.
his hand is still guiding.
I love it.
This right now, years later.
No, that's awesome. He's an amazing man. I'm glad that you guys. I'm glad you appreciate him the way I have my entire life. It's really cool. It means a lot.
Well, Hunter, thank you so much for coming on. This is a great delight to talk to you. I long time ago was a aspiring pro tennis player and still kind of am, but we'll see what happens with that. Or no, I'm 26, but I love athletics and I love this story, and I'm so glad you're able to take that and be so successful.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on today. It's been a joy and fun to talk to you and get to see where this what you're doing here and interviewing people and giving a positive spin on things and basically letting people know that there's a lot happening in this country and this world it's for good. You know, it's like you said earlier,
outside of your control.
Absolutely,
totally outside of your control.
Yep. Then you're doing it, and I think continue to work on this, to work on this podcast. It's really cool. I can't wait to follow and see more stories, and I look forward to seeing where you're going to be a year from now.
And
really neat.
The goal is to just help to inspire people, because it spreads like wildfire.
Absolutely.
But it takes maintenance though. It takes a consistent ability to look at someone like Hunter and not look at all the other stuff you might see and all the other, even if you have a good person, you might get annoyed at something they do and it just annoys you for the rest of the day.
Right.
It's strong, it's very powerful, but it requires a consistency, just much like athletic training.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I do this, and that's why we're here.
That's cool.
So
that's cool.
Thank
Well
you
said.
so much. This
Well said.
is fantastic.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.